Hi, and welcome back to Rate That Album, back and forth album review between myself, Joseph Fremming, and my good friend Paul Muad'Dib. Paul, how was that cheeseburger and new Rolling Stone?
I'm just waiting to go to the wrecking ball so I can go dance.
Yeah, this week, because he's in the news right now for, upsetting the apple cart with Spotify. We're doing Freedom by Neil Young, an album that kind of basically was a big comeback album for him in the late 80s after a decade of, we'll get into it as we talk. But first, I think the elephant in the room is, so Neil Young asked Spotify to pull his music because of disinformation from Joe Rogan's podcast that they bought exclusively for like $100 million or some obscene amount of money, which created a whole big hubbub, and people really
everyone has their opinion on it.
Everybody has an opinion, but like what bothered me the most was people like posting "Rockin' in the Free World." It'd be like, but only if Neil Young approves of it. And I'm like, and each time somebody does that, I'm like, have you listened to that lyrics of the song? The free world and Neil Young's "Rockin' in the Free World" is not really an idealistic free world.
No.
Your free world is all about dumpster babies and people just wishing they were dead. Then
by all means, welcome
to Dick Cheney's America.
So, I want to get a little bit into it because I just have to talk a little bit about the politics behind it. And I'm not going to, there's something that I find really interesting. And it's this weird catch-22 to what everyone is saying with what's going on right now with cancel culture and, the whole speaking with your pocketbook, right? So you're boycotting things or you're saying this and you're oh man, you're trying to get people canceled. But at the same time, like, the whole thing was, we talked about, like both sides, left and right, have done this type of thing where we won't spend money here, but, then the other side's like, well, then you're being hip. Like, I don't get the full circle with it because what are really you supposed to do? Because that's the whole idea behind things was that you do things as a company, as a corporation, and that makes or breaks whether someone's going to buy your shit or not.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it's always been.
Yeah.
Right?
And this whole cancel culture thing, both sides are super guilty of it. You see a lot on the right these days because they're attacking Neil Young because they say he wants to censor Joe Rogan. He just asked that Spotify either pull his music or pull the podcast, which I guess is a form of censorship. It wasn't really the best way for Young to go about it. But the people who are like, well, man, he's all censorship and shit like that, like, these are the people that wanted the Dixie Chicks pulled off the radio for criticizing W. Everybody.
Yes.
And we talked a little bit about this, not recording, but everybody has a line in the sand when it comes to what they think free speech is. A lot of people confuse what free speech is.
Yes.
And here's the thing with the Spotify. So Spotify, Joe Rogan, and Neil Young are all exercising their First Amendment rights.
Yep.
Each and every one of them. They all have the right to do it, and I support that. I pulled my Spotify account, my paid one, on the basis that I did not want my money going to promoting disinformation about vaccines during a global pandemic. So I voted with my pocketbook, and people will probably accuse me of being pro-censorship, but I'm not really asking for them to censor Joe Rogan. I just don't want any part of it.
And that's the difference, right? Like there's a difference between, say, like banning a book, out there.
Which they're doing.
Which
they're Tennessee right now.
Yes. They're banning books. And here's where I see the big differences here. And I think there's some common sense here that people are just missing because we are at a height of just everyone wants to fight at this point. Like we are just boiling, where there just needs to be a riot. We had them here in Minnesota, and we're like the nicest people. Just have a riot in your state and you'll feel better. I promise. But the difference here is that was, a story. That was something that was telling something, and that's something that's making a point. The difference here is that Joe Rogan, for better or worse, he just is. He's part of this group of grifters. That's what it is. He knows what he's doing. And the thing is, he's smart. He's smarter about than most people, because he'll sit up and straight up there and at least say, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I don't know what I'm asking. I don't know the information. I'm not smart enough to know this stuff. So I'll bring on other people. And I will say, that I do appreciate the fact that he's like, hey, I'm willing to bring on other people and get more opinions. Yeah.
Here's the thing. Before people attack me and maybe you, I have listened to his podcast.
I have too.
Mm-hmm. I don't find it as engaging as a lot of people do. Maybe because I knew so many. We had friends, and I can think of one friend in particular. I won't name him. That his conspiracy, thinking everything's like the government.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. I went through that for 10 years with a particular friend. I'm not inclined to sit and listen to somebody else do it to me now that I finally found peace. But yeah, there's some episodes of his show that I enjoyed. He had David Miscavige's father on. David Miscavige is the leader of Scientology. Mm-hmm. That was an interesting episode. But then he has these weird kooks, and he gives them a platform, and he doesn't really challenge them. And I can see that's where a lot of this is now blowing up into the ether of rage that is now America.
Yes. And this is the thing that I have a problem with, is this whole idea that I miss challenging journalism. I miss this. No one wants to do it anymore. Everything's a fluff piece. Everything's just let people say what they're going to say because they want to have more guests on. They want to, they realize that by being passive and by not engaging or by not pushing back on someone, that they're going to get more things. And what frustrates me with Joe Rogan is I have seen him do that before. He had a guy on, I can't remember his name, used to be on the Young Turks and then became this giant uber neocon. I forget his name. It's not important. He runs around with Ben Shapiro. Anyways, he had him on, and I will give Joe Rogan credit because he was talking about how we don't need regulations. And Joe Rogan's like, whoa, my dad was in construction. Absolutely, we need regulations. Those guys will cut every fucking corner. And he had this guy kind of running circles. And I don't think he thought Joe Rogan was going to push him on this. And Joe Rogan was, and it was a friend of his. He had him on a couple of times. And after that episode, Joe Rogan never did invite him back. So Joe Rogan is capable of pushing back. Joe Rogan, and that told me Joe Rogan knows what he's doing, and that's what makes it frustrating for me, because he's pandering to a community for money. And I get it, maybe for $1 million, for $10 million, maybe I'd go on Fox News and tout conspiracies, but I really don't think I could do that. You couldn't pay me enough to be a fuckface.
Yeah. So, but yeah, and especially with the pandemic, he's been kind of playing fast and loose, and nobody's going to him for medical advice. I get that, but he's putting people on that are pushing junk.
Yes.
And don't get me wrong. It's healthy for people to question what's in these things.
100%. 100%.
But he's bringing the weirdest fucking people. But at the end of the day, because this, I don't want to be talker. Because
no, I don't either. No.
It's just I never thought the most problematic actor on news radio was going to be Joe Rogan.
Right, the guy who took down Carlos Mencia. That's the weirdest thing.
Yeah. I think we all had our money on Andy Dick, and that was good for a couple decades. But
I did. I thought I was going to have problems with Andy
but basically, at the end of the day, Neil Young said, "I don't want my music on this platform that's pushing this," and they pull it, and now it's just been this giant clusterfuck. People are drawing lines in the sand. Whatever. It's. I just love that he's like almost 80 years old and he's still just fucking things up. I love it. And here's the thing: Spotify's $1 billion corporation that fucks over recording artists.
Really does.
So it's not really like you're rooting for a little guy here if you're blindly just rooting for Spotify.
And I will say that I have never paid for Spotify ever because, number one, I knew that it was one of the, I knew about it early on that there was a lot of artists complaining about it's like the cheapest payout of all the streaming services. But the thing that really bothered me, and you and I have talked about this, I think off air, I'm not sure if we talked about it on air, maybe a little bit last episode, is the fact that their quality of music is not great for what you're paying. No,
and that was another thing. I believe, and I could be wrong, Jamie, pull up the video. It's that they were gonna go like with what Tidal and Amazon Music and a lot of other with Ultra HD quality streaming, and that kind of went on the wayside when they signed Rogan for $100 million. And they're really investing in podcasts because they're really cheap.
Yeah,
they're cheap to produce and they get a lot of listeners and ad revenue. So, because here's the thing, you listen to a podcast on Spotify, they still do the on-air ads.
Yep.
It's not like the music where, unless a band for some reason does a commercial on an album, like you don't come across that.
No, there's more money to be made in professional podcasting because exactly that, the ad revenue and that type of thing. And and again, they weren't really paying. They were making hand over fist. And again, I know several artists that pulled their shit off of Spotify because they hated it.
Well,
and they went
biggest was a few years ago, Taylor Swift.
Yep.
She put it back on, but you have to figure she probably negotiated a pretty fucking sweet deal.
And if I remember correctly, this is the first time Neil Young was going to leave Spotify.
Oh, he's left it before. He left it before too.
And he left it before because of the audio quality.
Yeah, he's a big audiophile. That's a murky area because he tried pushing this Pono thing. And it was Gizmodo did a pretty good write-up on the junk science of that because the ears can only process so much information. So it was like he was like touting this thing. It was like, well, nobody can really hear that. What you're describing. That was like the gist of it. But
it's like it was like when Nintendo was spouting like 200 and some million colors on the Super Nintendo, and we're going, you can only process so many fucking colors, guys.
Yeah, pretty much. So he pulls. Some artists, others have pulled now too. Crosby, Stills, Nash, Joni Mitchell, Indy.Re pulled.
Yes.
Mary Trump pulled her podcast. Some people are pulling their podcasts. At the end of the day, this was a war Neil Young knew he wasn't going to win. He just didn't want to be associated with it. And I think also, I really, part of me is like, I don't think it was all Joe Rogan. I think it was he just didn't like the sound quality of Spotify, and this just kind of triggered that too. So
I think there's a lot of I think there's more to it than just the Joe Rogan thing, but I think the Joe Rogan thing was kind of the last straw.
Yeah, I think it's the last straw. People, because here's the thing: Neil Young had polio, and so did I believe Joni Mitchell too, and those vaccines kind of saved their lives.
Yep. Yeah.
So they're gonna be pretty pro let's not die if we have this or sort of thing. So yeah, at the end of the day, like everybody involved views free speech. Everybody is just confusing what free speech is, and it's very frustrating.
It's super frustrating because both you and I are history buffs. You especially with the the work that you do. You're involved in free speech every day. I've been doing speeches and things like that, and I have to worry about compliance, and I always had to be worried about this and that. So what people tout as free speech and say is free speech is not what the meaning of free speech is, and that's the super frustrating thing is.
Yeah, they think it's nobody can question them on their speech. That's a lot of what people think. Like, well, what the fuck, Like,
yep, I'm allowed to say what I want.
It's a two-way street. It's always been a two-way street. And we just live in such divisive political times. It's just it's rough. And I just saw on Bill Maher last week, a former president of the ACLU, talking about how that's become politicized and they only pick certain types of free speech cases now.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas before, the ACLU would defend both,
left and right.
Extreme far left and extreme far right.
Yep.
They defended Nazis. So.
Yes, they did. Yeah. No, people forget that. People, I hear a lot of people on the right bitch about the ACLU, but it's like, they defended Nazis, right?
Yeah.
That's why I also get pissed off at people on the left. It's like, the ACLU is not a fucking hero, right?
Yeah, but it's protecting speech, and that's important. Free speech is very important to our democracy, and people just have to realize Neil Young is very much in his rights to say, I don't like that and I want it shut down. Nobody has to do it. He can say that, though. But when you're seeing politicians, like if a school board decides to pull books, then that's the government censoring, and that flies in the face of the First Amendment. Neil Young is not flying in the face of the First Amendment. He's just exercising, probably not in the best way, but he's still exercising his rights too.
Well, and at the end of the day, he's also expressing his capitalistic endeavors. Yeah. He can choose where he wants to have his money.
And here's the thing. He's one of the few artists who can do that too.
And that's what I think is also missed on a lot of people, because there are artists that could not do this.
Yeah, there's art, because labels typically own publishing rights. Or publishing companies do. Yep. I don't know if labels do anymore, but publishing companies usually buy that, and they decide where and when these songs can be used. Labels can do that too with distribution. So I think this falls under distribution with the labels. And, artists can be like, if you sign it and you don't own your publishing rights and you don't have in your contract saying you control your music, you're fucked.
Yep. Yep,
you could yell to your blue in the face, and they'll just be like, "Ha, we're not pulling this."
Or vice versa. Like, hey, I want my music on this. Sorry, we don't have a deal with them. We're not putting your music on that platform.
Exactly. Yep. I mean, Neil Young he's just always been super protective of his music. So, he has that pull where he can do that. Most artists don't.
Correct.
Most artists have no say in where their music is used or what. The best example of that was when Michael Jackson bought the publishing to the Beatles.
Yes.
And they used Revolution in a Nike ad, which pissed off the surviving Beatles, but they had no say in it.
No, well, and the interesting thing about that was that, I mean, you probably know the story, but for the audience, John Lennon, when he was alive, was approached by Nike, and they're like, "Hey, can you do a song for us?" He's like, "Yeah, I'll do a song." And he took the heartbeat of their miscarried child. It was in Yoko's that miscarried a child, and he had the heartbeat, and he submitted that as the music of this dying dying fetus. Yeah, the heartbeat of a dying fetus, and said, "Here's your fucking music." Like, he was notorious about not wanting to have his music used, very much like the Beastie Boys were and are, that they didn't want to have their music used for advertising. And yeah, Michael Jackson got the rights to it. That's a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other thing.
That's a whole other podcast.
They basically, who controls it has this say. Neil Young he's able to do this. I'm not sure if he actually owns the rights to his music or if he just has that much pull with his label. I'd imagine it's the pull with the label, since because
the label came out and supported him.
Boatloads of money.
Yeah, and the label came out and said we stand with Neil Young's decision.
Yeah.
And I will say that, just on while we're on this topic, I know this is going to be a longer one. I can already tell. But while we're on this topic, the shit, I lost my train of thought. Go ahead, go.
All right. But so with all this, I decided to go with the Freedom album, which this is an album. This is probably one of my favorite Neil Young albums, just because it was kind of like his big comeback. You want to start talking about the album now that we got the?
Yes, but I just remember what I was going to say, and then we could get to the album. So okay. I was going to say was that what Neil Young's doing and that ability did not exist like pre-2000s. Basically because digital music wasn't really a thing until Napster came out and really changed the world and changed that to that point where, as I talked about in our last episode, where I was going to do the record company deal, and I said no. I had no. I didn't say this during that time. I had no rights over the music. Yeah. It was owned by the label that I would have signed with. I would have not. They could have done whatever they wanted to. They could have not played it on the radio. They could have played it on certain radios. They could have used it for advertising. They could have done whatever they fucking wanted. And, there was a time where you just had to do whatever the label said because all there was albums, cassettes, CDs. And then the whole electronic age and digital media changed everything. And now I do feel like it's swinging. It has been swinging better in some ways for the artist's favor, and in some ways it hasn't. But there have been people like Neil Young, like Prince, like that, who have really fought for artists' rights over the years, and that's something that you really got to give them credit for.
Yep. Yeah. So let's talk Freedom, Neil Young.
Yes.
1989 album. So we're gonna go backpedal a little bit, back into the late 70s when Neil Young leaves his label Reprise because he's wooed by David Geffen.
Mm-hmm.
David Geffen was a business partner of Neil Young's manager, Elliot Mazer, I think. They they discovered Buffalo Springfield and spearheaded Young's solo career. And so Geffen in the early 80s starts his own label, Geffen Records.
Yep.
And he starts snagging big names. One of them is Neil Young.
Yep.
But Geffen, Geffen is he's not an artist kind of guy. He wanted big hits. He wanted these bands to be doing what they were doing previously, that were just selling millions upon millions of records. Hmm. And at this time, Neil Young and his wife had a child, Zeke. Now, Young has two children. They have a neurological disorder, I believe.
Oh, okay. Is it from the vaccines?
No.
Sorry, I had to do that. Bad me. I'm sorry, that was a joke.
Cerebral palsy.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, so cerebral palsy. So
no, is that with Susan or was that with Peggy?
Peggy.
Okay.
With Peggy.
Okay.
Or maybe it was, I don't remember. It's been a while since I've read the biography, but at this time, they're going through all sorts of, because in the early 80s, late 70s, early 80s, there's not a lot of information on how to raise a child with cerebral palsy.
Yes.
And all sorts of ailments. So he's going through all these different things that it's hard for the child to communicate. So he gets inspired and he makes this album called Trans. Trans uses a lot of electronic music in it with his acoustic and the vocoder, so he makes him sound like a robot.
Yep. The vocoder. Yep.
So that was I think it was his first album with Geffen. Not a big hit. It was derided because it was just weird and different, but that's where he was at the time. Neil Young's always about like where he's at the time. You're not going to pressure him to do the album you want him to do. No. And Geffen had paid any attention from 68 to even though Neil Young does what Neil Young wants. So he does. So he's doing these string of albums for Geffen, and he does a country album, and then he starts playing these state fairs, and he's like talking about how much he loves Reagan and hates hippies. He's just like he's going through a really prickly, era, but it's understandable. His home life is rough. He's raising a special needs child, and it's a lot of pressure. And so Geffen's like, well, I want a rock and roll album. So Neil Young gets a band called the Shocking Pinks, and they make an album called Everybody's Rocking, a 1950s theme rock and roll album.
Did Geffen?
It gets the tension between Geffen and Young God, I love Neil Young. He's such a prick. Like, he just
awesome.
He says to this day he didn't make bad albums on purpose, but I really feel like he was making bad albums on purpose with Geffen. Because these are not good albums. It gets to a point where Geffen sues Neil Young for not making Neil Young music.
Jesus Christ, Geffen.
It got to a head. And so he eventually leaves the label. And the album Before Freedom is called This Note's for You. It's an infamous, basically talking about what we just did about commercialization of music. The video is just him making fun of bands and artists like Clapton and shit, doing beer commercials. It's really, if you have time, watch the video for This Note's for You. It's pretty good.
That's fantastic.
But he goes back to the studio and he actually wants to make a Neil Young record. So he does Freedom, which is a lot similar in vein to Rust Never Sleeps in that it opens and closes with an acoustic and electric version of a song, the same song. This one is Rockin' in the Free World. Rust Never Sleeps is Hey, Hey, My, My.
Yep.
Parts of these songs were on an EP called El Dorado. You can tell, you would know, so I'll tell you what the songs were on this EP. It was Australian and Japan only. Don't Cry, El Dorado, and On Broadway, which are the songs that very much have the same feel.
Yes.
On this album.
Yes. Very feel. Yes.
But yeah, this was his big comeback, and he's angry, and he has a political statement, which everybody confuses to this day.
It's so ridiculous.
It's people getting mad and using Rockin' in the Free World, calling Young a hypocrite for freedom. It's people calling Bruce Springsteen a hypocrite on the Vietnam War while playing Born in the USA.
Oh God, it's just God damn it. This is why I love and I get cringy with satire, because I'm like, someone's going to take this shit seriously.
Springsteen, I can see it as the satire because it really has this. And Rockin' in the Free World, man, it's not like the vocals and shit are not buried in a very joyful. This is a pissed off song,
right?
Yeah. So this was his big comeback, and he's kind of he flies in with the Rush with, he was called the Godfather of grunge.
Yep.
His Kurt Cobain and Pearl Jam and all these like Mudhoney and all these bands cited Neil Young and Crazy Horse specifically. I mean, Crazy Horse is amazing. His really shitty jam band, which is phenomenal though. They're great and bad at the same time, and I love it.
I have to completely agree. They're just
the sloppiest band. But
that is the best way of putting together Crazy Horse, because I've always been I don't know why I like Crazy Horse, but I do, and I just can't put my finger on it. But I shouldn't.
They're not precise musicians.
Yeah, exactly.
There's flub notes, but they're all good with it. And Young's just cool. It's funny because in the book, people who record with Neil really have this sore spot with Crazy Horse, because if they hit sour note and let's say Young says something about it, they'll just tell him to go fuck himself. But if that happens like with like his other albums with his other bands, he'll fire them.
Oh God.
Yeah. Like, so Crazy Horse has like this really weird soft spot in his heart. So like they can pretty much kind of do whatever with him.
That's hilarious. That's fucking hilarious.
Yeah. So so we're gonna now discuss Freedom by Neil Young, his big comeback. Neil Young has a lot of peaks and valleys in his career, like anybody who's released the amount of albums he has over 6 decades at this point.
Yeah.
So, Paul, what are your initial thoughts with Freedom?
So, I was thinking about this because I've been thinking about how to word this. So I have a dubious way that I heard of Freedom. And the thing is that I don't exactly remember the story there, but somehow, some way, I ended up with someone's CD collection, and this album was like out of the CD collection, the only album that I remember. And I just, like I said, I'm trying to remember how I got a hold of the CD collection. I can't, and that pisses me off. But so this album, prior to hearing this album, I could not handle any form of country, any form of Southern rock, anything like that. Like, growing up in Minnesota, growing up, around kind of country, which is just weird because we're got this progressive thing. But as soon as you leave like the Minneapolis area, it becomes like the fucking Bible Belt, and everyone loves
Minneapolis and Duluth.
It's weird. It's Alabama. I mean, you go through. I mean, I remember like as a kid, like my parents on the radio. There was like maybe 3 stations, maybe 4, when we were kids that weren't country, and that pissed me off. We lived in a larger town now. As we got older, there was more and more, and antennas got better, and we could hear things from the cities. But Jesus Christ! So I just hated country, anything with a passion, and Southern rock with a passion, and just like if it was on, I got physically angry. And then this comes along, and I bring that because there's a lot of Southern rock to this album. And it's because of this album that I started opening my mind, and now I can get in the bluegrass and can handle some of the more, the standard country. I still can't do modern country, and I will never try, and I don't want to try. Fuck off. But yeah, this album is fantastic. Like, I remember just, again, having the CD collection, and I would listen to this, and I actually ended up playing, having 2 of the songs off this album that I would do live for shows and covers. Mm-hmm.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Yep. I would do "Rockin' in the Free World," and I would do "Hanging on a Limb." Yep.
"Hanging on a Limb's a great song.
It's a great song, and it's so fun to play. It's so fun to play on guitar.
Album. So I think a lot of people think this is like a big rock album.
It's not.
It's not.
It's not. It's really, really, like, I was trying to like describe, like, how do I want to describe this album? And the best way I could describe it is it's eclectic. I mean, you're getting Heartland rock, you're getting Southern rock, you're getting hard rock, but man, there's points in the album where I was like, that is punk rock. like there's some punk shit here.
And I love getting this like Southern rock and country from a man from Ontario, Canada. Right.
Yeah, I think it's well, I'm sure we'll go through track by track. So I'll get
Neil
to that.
Young was once in a band with Rick James.
That's so awesome.
Back in Canada, Rick James was in Canada to avoid the Vietnam draft. Started a band with Neil Young, and they actually got to Motown, I believe. And then the government found out James was draft dodging, and that blew that up.
Oh no, that sucks.
Yeah, Neil Young's got a fucking weird story, man.
I gotta get this book. This book.
Again, like I think I said it on the podcast last time. Like, he just tells this reporter, "Hey, go talk to this guy," yeah, I haven't talked to him in years. He's a really great guy. And the reporter goes, and Neil Young's the biggest son of a bitch I've ever met in my life.
That's so fantastic. Yeah, I gotta, because there's just, I mean, and it's his career really is very storied. You know, you hear people say that word, but it really is. Like, there's so many stories about Neil Young over the years that you just go, what the fuck?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and it's, getting back, so yeah, this is a very eclectic album, and it's really very interesting. There's a lot. He does things with, especially on some of the two longer songs, who he utilizes like bass, like hitting down on a bass onto the pickup.
Yes,
for an effect, like instead of like for, you know, like music, it's just more like to add an accent, which is strange.
Awesome. It's awesome. Like
it's awesome.
It sounds like a gunshot going off, I think, on Don't Cry.
Yeah. So it's like very just eclectic and strange, and yeah, I love it because this is also probably the album David Geffen wished Neil Young were. Like he leaves and immediately kicks this out, like, "Oh, you son of a bitch!"
You know, if he had waited to sue Neil Young till this album came out, he probably would have won.
I can see it. It's like it's because if you look at his career, it's like it. I'll throw Trans in, it's because it still has some classic, but like after Trans, but before Freedom, it's like this weird fucking period where it's just like, my God, this music's not listenable.
I just wonder if he didn't get along with Geffen like right off the bat.
He's known Geffen since the 60s, so
right.
That was weird. But Geffen would pull shit, like, so like Neil Young, like with his Reprise, like if he wanted to go in the studio, they'd be like, yeah, go fuck it, go do whatever you want, Neil, you make us money. With Geffen, he was such a micromanager that like Young goes, like if he was on tour and he wanted to pop in the studio just to record some random shit, like it'd have to go past the bean counters, which really pissed Neil Young off because he wasn't used to that.
Yeah. And Neil Young earned a spot. He doesn't need to put up with it.
No, especially by the 80s. He's already, you know, if you look at this string of like albums, you know, like everybody knows this is Nowhere, After the Gold Rush, Harvest, Tonight's the Night, like Rust Never Sleeps. Like he's just fucking, you know, they got, you know, he's basically an ATM for them.
Yeah, just if Neil Young wants to go in the studio and record some shit, you let Neil Young go in the studio and record some shit.
At one point, Geffen told him no, and he got so pissed off.
I would have flipped out. I've been like, "What the fuck do you mean no? Like, come on! Like, my job is to write music. Let me do my fucking job."
Yeah, it's wild, man. But yeah, so. You want to do track by track on this one? I mean, we're already running long, but
we are running long. But we can go track by track. I don't mind running long on this one because it's a long album.
Yeah, but it's long, but it's really good. I just there's only one song I really don't like on it. Well, we'll get to that one.
So let me ask you, because what was your introduction to Freedom?
Remember that, or oddly enough, that conspiracy theory friend.
Yes. Yes.
He's the one who got me into it.
That's hilarious.
Yeah. He just loved Neil Young Freedom. And he was always talking about it. And then so it came. I was working at CD Warehouse, and it came in used, and I was like, "Well, fuck, I'll buy it." And I did, and I was like, "Holy shit!
Yeah,
this is really good."
It's so good. Yeah, let's go track by track. So we have obviously the acoustic live version of Rockin' in the Free World.
Which version do you like better?
God, they both have their merits, don't they?
I do. Yeah. When he's on acoustic, he's so precise.
Mm-hmm.
But when he's on electric, he's the sloppiest fucking guitarist in there.
Yeah, I think that's the charm with me, the electric version, because the electric version, he sound like you get the anger. You get the anger more than the live acoustic one.
See, I figured you would go with the acoustic because you always like the preciseness of instrumentation.
I do, but again,
when it comes to Neil Young, it's like fuck it.
Well, and again, he's so. I mean, the notes and the noise and the thing. He's so good at it, and that's part of what really shines for me on this album as a whole. Is just like the garble and like I said, like the gunshots and that bass on the pickup. It's so experimental, especially for being in the 80s. I mean, no one was doing this shit, and it's just I have to go with the electric. What about you?
I'm partial to the acoustic now. I used to be about the electric, but now I kind of like the acoustic for some reason.
Fair enough.
That changes it. Look, when it comes to Neil Young, I'm always changing my mind. Full disclosure, I'm a huge Neil Young fan. I just fucking love it. And like this whole Spotify, Joe Rogan, blah, 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 really got me rekindling my interest in his music again. Like I go through years where I'm just like, yeah, whatever. But then I'm like, oh yeah, fuck, freedom, man. That's an awesome
right.
Let's take a look at these lyrics, because again, people were confusing.
Yes.
This is like a pro, like this big anthem about how great freedom is. And there's colors on the street, red, white, and blue, people shuffling their feet, people sleeping in their shoes. There's a warning sign on the road ahead. There's a lot of people saying we'd be better off dead. Don't feel like Satan, but I am to them. So I try to forget any way I can.
Yep. And then we get the I see a woman in the night with a baby in her hand near an old street light near a garbage can. Now she put the kid away and she's gone to get her hit. She hates her life and what she's done to it. Yeah. That's one more kid that will never go to school, never get to fall in love, never get to be cool, keep on rocking in the free world. It's like, come on, how do you not know?
And then the third starts with a real big, because at the time George H.W. Bush was president and he had 1,000 points of light.
Yep.
So we got 1,000 points of light for the homeless man. We got a kinder, gentler machine gun hand.
We got
this is like when the whole kind of compassionate conservatism was.
Yep. Yep, absolutely.
He just called it out right away.
Right away.
I'm seeing your bullshit, guys. So yeah, this is not really an anthem about how great the free world is.
No.
It's taken basically unfettered, freedom and kind of flipping it.
Yes.
I think if the idealized, people talk about freedom, but they really don't know what it is. But if you had 100% pure freedom to do whatever the fuck you wanted, it'd be anarchy and it'd be like those lyrics.
Yes, completely agree. And, the thing is that, again, I mean, he was pointing out where things were headed in the 80s. It was this weird, you had gone from, and you have to understand that Neil Young being around from the 60s and 70s, and again, me being, I know you are too, being a big history buff, you have to understand that things were really kind of moving away from like what was the McCarthyism of the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s, and you started to see this shift towards a more relaxed, more accepting America, and then the 80s hit with Reagan and George and Bush and Cheney and all these people that were, again, everyone that was in fucking George W's. yeah. Everyone that was in the Nixon administration was in the Reagan administration, was in George W. Senior's administration, was in George W. Junior's administration. And so you have this whole going back to this way that we were getting away from. Yep. Now we're going back this way, and that gets lost on the younger generation.
And a lot of people forget the hippies turned into yuppies.
Yes.
They kind of sold out their idealism, like that line in SLC Punk. I didn't sell out, son. I bought in.
I bought in, right? Yeah.
Jerry Rubin of the yippies became all pro stock market and became an investor in stocks and shit like that.
And now we got OK Boomer. I mean, it's the same people, right? The hippies were the yuppies, are now the OK Boomer. Yeah. It's a very selfish generation. Generation.
Yeah, the me generation.
Selfish. Yeah, the me generation is what they're called. The me generation. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
It was fine when they could do it, but now fuck all you because I want mine. Yep.
Yeah. So, this song kind of is, it's also like a fuck you to them.
Completely. It's like, you guys lost your fucking way. Absolutely. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Completely. Yeah. No, so, I love it.
So now we go into track 2, Crime in the City, 60 to 0, part 1.
which is
part 2 as far as I know.
I was going to say, I don't know a part. I was going to ask you, do you
he
know
probably has a
part 2?
recorded version of a part 2 somewhere. He's got massive archives of unreleased music.
I was going to ask, because there was also a time, like, again, a lot of like concept bands and things like that, and bands were doing part 1, part 4, when there wasn't a part 2 or part 1, 2, 3. So I just wonder if that was a thing
Traveling
that they did.
Wilburys. Volume 2 starts with volume 2.
Starts with volume 2, just to fuck with people. So,
yeah. This kind of falls with the same kind of concept of rocking in the free world.
100%. Very much so. And I want to also say that it clocks in at 8 minutes, 45 seconds.
Yes.
It's a long song.
It's a story.
It's a story. And
it's one of the 2 story songs. Well, like they all kind of have stories, but this is like almost long form narrative.
Yes. It reminded me of, I know you're not a big Dylan fan, but it reminded me of what Dylan did, especially with, say, Hurricane. Very much so. I compare the 2. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just, it's showing how dirty and basically how America was really just taking a nosedive.
Yeah. I mean, he's talking
crime and it shows like poverty and crime are hand in hand.
Poverty, crime, even talking about them, like cops being on the take and being dirty cops, even back then. He was talking about, at this point, divorce was on the rise in America. That wasn't seen in levels. Now we've kind of come to terms with it, but this was the true rise of divorce in America. You get that. You got kind of again that whole hitting up the yuppies. About what it's like, to be, like old and what you do when you're young and how you're old and how you kind of sell out your ideals. Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, this was, yeah, crime, crack, drugs, talking about the kid who's his boss selling drugs on the corner.
Exactly. Yeah. He's getting paid by a kid who's selling drugs. Yeah.
Yeah. It kind of just showed like what Reagan's America, but you can't pin it all on Reagan. I think a lot of this was just gonna happen, but he certainly didn't help. You could probably pin a lot of it on him.
You could pin a lot of it on Reagan. I know you're trying to be
regulations, and a lot of jobs are being now shipped overseas or into Mexico. Like a lot of labor jobs, like people were just getting fucked over hand over fist.
Yep, and then it was, but we're gonna distract you when we're doing all of this with the war on drugs. Yeah, and that was the really shitty part.
Yeah, so yeah, this is really I really like this song a lot.
It's a great song, and I love the way it's told. I love the story with it. Again, even though it's an 8-minute song, I'm not bored. Bored.
The bass,
boom. Yeah, so good, so good. Yeah.
So next up is "Don't Cry." I really like the song too. I just love how the vocals. It's interesting sonically to me.
Yeah, this is the one I believe that has the gunshots, if I'm not mistaken, like the gunshot noise. And one of the things is too that you can hear, and I noticed this was you can actually hear a part when it goes really loud, like when he just and then you could tell he's turning up the amp and turning it down because you can actually hear it going up and down, like it's not like a like what we'd be used to, like a fade or like done on the production. It's actually done on the amp.
Yeah, that's wild. It's wild.
Yeah, it's really cool. We haven't discussed, and I think this is a good time to do it, the uniqueness of Neil Young's voice.
Yeah, it's very unconventional. I know a lot of people who don't like it. I get it. Trust me, I get it. I hate Dylan's voice, and so I'm not guilty of that sort of shit, but it's unique. And this is very echoey, like it's a really cool like echo. It sounds like it's underwater almost.
Yeah, there's a lot of reverb. There's a lot of like that reverb. Again, this is very experimental and it's just super awesome. And I will say, I think the difference between Neil Young and Bob Dylan is that with Bob Dylan, my understanding was from things I read was that Bob Dylan was kind of upset for a while because everyone looked at him as like being this young kid and blah, blah, blah. So he started singing like in these really low kind of tunes, and like Bob Dylan's voice was kind of all over the place, and he never really, and it didn't really match somewhat of what he was playing all the time. Like it worked great on those, the 3 albums we brought up before, Bring It Back Home, Highway 61, he found kind of a niche there, but with Neil Young, what he played fit the voice.
Yeah.
And I think that's the big difference. Yeah.
And that's why he's hard to cover. Like, I mean, I've heard cover songs, but like he's so unique. Like you said with Dylan, it doesn't naturally. So it's kind of easier to cover a Bob Dylan song.
Absolutely.
But with Neil Young, it's his voice is so unique with his playing and like what you're hearing, like it's
I will
hard. It's hard to cover that.
And I will tell you, like now that I'm in my 40s, my voice is changed. Like I used to be able to hit higher notes than I could. I don't think if I were to go out and do if I were to go play tomorrow somewhere, I don't think I could sing Hanging on a Limb like I could in my 20s. I just don't think I could do it.
Yeah, no, I don't. Yeah.
No, I just don't. I mean, I'll tell you, I'll be straight up honest. I don't think I could. Don't Cry. I mean, again, lyrically, it's not the greatest thing on the album by far. No. But at the same time, you could tell this is a breakup song.
Yeah.
This is a breakup song. And it's an angry breakup. You could tell sonically from the music.
One thing Neil Young's really bad at is breaking up with people. I think it was his first wife. He just moved out of the house and didn't tell her. And when he left and never came back, and then a lawyer showed up.
Oh my God.
Yeah. He's not a good breaker-upper, that's for sure.
Well, I'll help you pack your things. I'll walk you out to the car. I'm being a nice guy.
I wouldn't even go that far. He'd just leave and have his lawyer kick him out. So Hanging on a Limb's next. You've said you've covered this.
I covered this. I love the song.
Yeah, it's such
the
first 5 songs in this album are so solid. It's such it's stacked.
It really there is no, you and I have talked about, there's no such thing as a perfect album, but there are masterpieces. And this is a masterpiece album.
Yeah.
No question about it. It's not perfect. It's not.
No.
But no, I love the story that this song was telling. I love the fact, that it's like, there's so much going on here that I felt like, there's so many different ways that you can interpret like what your mood is and what the song's meaning is. It's just ambiguous in that regards. And again, I love the guitar, and it's so fun to play, and it does chords that like I'd never use in other songs. Like I would never use these chords in other songs, and I don't know how Neil Young even came about using some of these chords, and because it's so interesting. Yeah, I absolutely love it.
All right, yeah, me too. So then we get to El Dorado, the second longer-ish, story-ish song. Yes. I like this too because it has like the Spanish music vibe.
Yes, such a good song. And, I love the lyrics of it too, basically talking about like, you can, I mean, the way he's wording it, you can picture everything that he's saying, everything that he's singing. Like you could see the story playing out. And it's just fantastic. You could see it like in a dirty desert Mexican town, and the drug dealers are doing this, and the mariachi band, and it's fantastic. Yeah, fucking wonderful.
I love it. Yeah, this and Crime in the City are such like vividly told or sung stories that I love it. Then we get then it takes a kind of a it's Neil Young, so he's gonna do whatever the fuck he wants. So we get like kind of a love song going.
Well, it's not really a love song; it's an adultery song.
Hey, it's still love, man. Love is love.
It's all about him singing about how they're fucking, and her man's gonna be upset when he finds out.
Yeah, they're cuckolding this guy.
I have to say, I'm like, this is a weird way of redoing Layla.
Well, just imagine like the person who like knows this situation, like, oh fuck, this is in song form now.
That's the other thing I was thinking. I'm like, there's a guy that this song's written about, and he's got to know the song's written about him. Like this has got to be his most hated song in the world. So I like it.
Yeah,
but it's not the best song on the album.
Someday I don't like. It's the only. It sounds dated to me.
It's one of the weird ones that doesn't have to do it. Although I will say, like there's some things I liked about it. There's some things. There like I think it's the I think the data part of it I think is like the beginning and like the
piano.
The piano, the well, really the synthesizer. Yeah, is what dates it. Like I did like the second verse, you know, he's talking about the TV preacher, you can hear like the people in the background, you know, love, you know, singing about like loving Christ. And then like on the Alaska pipeline, you know, like you can hear like the ting. And I'm like, oh, that's where industrial music got its thing from. Like, all right, so Neil Young is the godfather of industrial music too.
But shadow looms large over a lot of people music, man. Like,
yeah, I mean, what it's saying, like the first couple, like the second and third lyric, are fine, but like the first and the third, I think part of my thing is anytime I hear a song about fly, I immediately think I'm learning to fly. Yeah. I'm like, fuck Gilmer, fuck you, Gilmer. Goddamn Gilmer, you ruin any song.
Gilmer probably suggested you do that on this. Like, hey, maybe you should do like some stupid sounding bullshit, Neil.
Yeah, talk about flying, Neil.
Talk about flying, Neil.
Get in there, get it done. I did it. It worked for me.
Done, Neil.
It's the best song on the album, Neil.
Next we get one of my favorite, just because it's so strange, covers.
Oh God, it's
on
great.
Broadway.
It kicks Broadway in the ass, dude. It's so angry. It's so bitter.
It's so good. Like Neil Young made me like a show tune.
So, did you get kicked off from Broadway for being drunk? Did you get thrown out at one point, Neil? Yeah, no. I mean, he's talking about, you know, like he can't get, he doesn't have the money to get the women on Broadway. You know, that no one says he's gonna be, you know, he's not gonna last. That, you know, he tears apart the whole Broadway thing and like takes away the shining lights and shows you the grime of what it is, and it's a wonderful cover in that regards.
Yeah. Then we get like kind of another kind of acoustic tune with Wrecking Ball. I like this too. Like,
I really like
such like a beautifully performed and written. It's just
and sung, and like, you know, the echo on his voice.
Yeah.
And it works so well. Like, again, Neil has that, you know, a voice that really grates with some people, but I feel like this one, like this is the prime example of why you have Neil Young has the fans of his vocals that they do, because this is just, yeah, it's a great song. It's, you know, it's I love it. I love it as well. Like, it's hard to explain why, but listen to it and you'll get it.
Yeah. Then we get No More, another. I'm not the hugest fan of this.
You know, this to me was like to me, I put this as the filler song of the album.
This felt like a filler.
This felt like a filler song of the album. Like, this did not need to be on there. No.
Felt like it padding it out a bit, but
yep. Yeah, I completely agree.
But then we go to Too Far Gone, and I really
love this song. Every time he gets to the empty pillow with perfume on, I smelled it. I just bust out. I'm like, Jesus Christ. I just picture Neil like picking up this pillow, like naked Neil and a fucking like 40-year-old naked Neil with a pillow just So yeah, no, it's a song about just being fucking out of control.
Yep.
And like
too far gone.
Being too far gone. Like, it's, you know, you're getting with this song, and it's whatever. Was I too far gone? It's great. It's so great.
It's right there in the title.
I don't know how we made it home. Like,
you know, it almost feels like it's written for Hunter Thompson.
Kinda, right? Yeah.
But you did the soundtrack to Where the Buffalo Roam.
Ah, yes. Oh, good.
And he actually has a cameo in the movie too.
I did not know that.
Yep.
I did not remember that. It's been a long time since I've seen that. He's just in
the background of the scene.
Oh, is he? That's awesome. Yeah. Bill Murray, just a side note, Bill Murray was the best choice for Hunter S. Thompson back in the 80s. Yeah. There's no one else that could have done it. There's no one else that could have done it.
Yeah, he never, he was, yeah. Like, like Depp, who played Thompson, like, that role just kind of stuck with him. Like, every movie afterwards, you see like a little Thompson mannerism.
This is my thing. When real quick while we're on that subject, so everyone was talking about how he hung out with Keith Richards and he used Keith Richards to be Captain Jack. I'm like, fuck no, he didn't.
That was Hunter Thompson.
He was Hunter Thompson the whole fucking time. Like, yeah, that was probably like at the time, like history, like watching Johnny Depp's career, because I was a big fan of Johnny Depp, still am, but like that was the culmination. Like that movie right there, when that came out, I was like, he is truly an amazing actor. Then everything afterwards, I was like, fuck.
He's just doing Hunter Thompson.
Yep. Yeah.
Even in Blow, man, he felt like Hunter Thompson, and that's just what?
Yes, he took a lot of Hunter. Like he never was able to let go of that role, but I think it. When you look at the background of Fear and Loathing, the amount of time he spent with Hunter, everything like that, like I think it had an immediate impact on him personally, and I just don't think that's something he's ever been able to shake off.
And that's the same with Bill Murray. Bill Murray became really good friends with Thompson, so that was like I'd say up until like the Wes Anderson movies, like every movie he had a Thompsonism.
Yep, I will agree with you on that one. That's a really valid point. Yeah, Wes Anderson was able to get something out of Bill Murray that not a lot of people could fucking rush more.
Yeah. God, I love that movie.
I love that movie so much. I gotta say real quick, I remember going to see Royal Tenenbaums in the theater, and
me too, by the way.
What's that?
I love Royal Tenenbaums too.
Yeah, I love that movie. Right, so the scene where it's the young Gwyneth Paltrow, and she gets her finger cut off, and I'm the only one in the theater laughing. I'm the only one in the theater laughing. Everyone else is like staring at me. I was like, oh my god, like,
it's hilarious.
It's fucking hilarious. But no one else got it. Like, yeah, I felt like. I was like, oh man, I've never been so red in a movie theater in my life. I was like, oh, I don't want to be here right now. Like, I should have just rented this. And then, so getting back to the next track is the Rockin' the Free World Electric.
Yep.
Which is sloppy. It's a sloppy, drunken mess. It's great. How old was Neil when he put out this album? He was old.
I think he was in his 40s.
I think he was like in his early mid 40s, right?
I think so.
I mean,
that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for a guy who in his mid, really to reinvent himself in this way with rock and just hit it. I mean, again, it's not a rock album, but just the stuff he was doing sonically. Yeah. Like again, the explosions and just like the amp and like the noise and the and the feedback and everything that he's doing in some of these songs that no one else, like I don't think if anyone else had done like Don't Cry would have thought to use the kind of feedback in a way that he did.
Yeah, it feels like he had a lot of like ideas pent up and he just unleashed it on this album, like where probably with Geffen he didn't have that. So,
and on paper, this doesn't work.
No, yeah, on paper, none of this. On paper, almost all of Neil Young's shit doesn't work.
Yeah, I mean, if you're an aspiring artist and you're listening to this podcast, don't use this as the blueprint. It will probably not work out in your favor.
Well, you never. It depends on what you want out of music that you're making. If you want fame and fortune, yeah, this isn't it. If you want to be creatively fulfilled, then maybe, go with your instincts.
God damn,
it's inspiring. He's doing all these different things and he's taking chances, and he's pulling it off.
Yeah, he did, and he really, 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 really did. Like it's fantastic. So yeah, overall, I love this album.
Yeah,
I do. I love this album. I'm really glad you picked it. I think we both knew. I mean, would you recommend it, Joe?
Yeah. I mean, the reception was really well for it too, because it was like back to form basically. Mm-hmm. So it got glowing reviews. But yeah, I would definitely check. I would say check it out. It's so weird and diverse, and you get all sorts of different kinds of music on it. it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, and kudos to, because I think he went back to Reprise for this one, didn't he?
Yep. He went back to his old label.
He went back to his old label and
knocked it out of the park.
I was gonna say, kudos to his label for letting him do something like this, because again, on paper, this doesn't make sense. On paper, the producer sitting in the back going, "Holy fuck, this guy's off the rails."
You're gonna cover on Broadway.
You just got people like Geffen would have pulled his hair out, from this. I think if he had let Neil do this, this never would have happened under Geffen. So the fact that Reprise was like, do you, Neil, and we're just gonna sit back and collect the check was brilliant on their part.
Yeah. Not a lot of labels did that, but
no.
With Reprise, kudos, they let him run wild.
Which is the best Neil Young you can get.
Yeah.
Is just an unfiltered, unadulterated Neil being Neil. Because you're going to get gold out of it in some way, shape, or form. And by God, did they get gold out of this. I mean, Rocket on the Free World. None of the other tracks really got radio play or get continued radio play. But Rocket in the Free World is still played on modern radio, not even old hits. It's played on modern radio still.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, goddamn, Joe, I'm so glad you picked this album.
I am too. It was good. That was a good one.
It was a great one. So what do you guys got going on at the Joedown?
We just did Cannibal the Musical, which is, one spadoinkle of a film.
So I love it like a baked potato.
Yeah. And then up next we got Predator 2.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah. Go back into the muck.
Yeah, you're getting in the muck with that one. How do you come off of what was Predator with Arnold Schwarzenegger and in the jungle? No, did someone just say jungle? I'm just picturing someone in the room going Predator, jungle, trees, urban jungle. We're going to do it in the urban jungle.
Well, they're probably listening to Welcome to the Jungle by Guns N' Roses. this is a jungle too.
And it's the most ridiculous future ever too. It's fucking it makes fucking Demolition Man look normal. It's apocalyptic, ridiculous times. Oh my God, Jesus Christ. Oh fuck! You're in for a treat with that one, because I just watched it recently because I couldn't sleep one night. So I was like, Predator 2, that will knock me out.
It didn't.
It didn't.
You just age watched it.
I kind of
blood pressure rising.
I kind of did, honestly. I was like, oh fuck, this is worse than I remember. I'm like, God, is this one? How could anything be worse than the Adrian Brody one? But God damn it, it kind of is.
The last one they did too was really bad.
The Predator, I didn't see it yet because it hasn't been on streaming yet, and I wasn't gonna pay money for it. Is it bad?
I didn't care for it.
Motherfucker. Oh God, it's such a simple premise. How do you fuck up Predator?
Too much nods and winks and jokes. Shane Black did it. He's hit and miss with me. So,
God damn it.
Yeah, I liked his The Nice Guys. That was good, but then he kind of put that kind of vibe into this Predator movie, and it doesn't really work.
That sucks. Yeah. Well, I hear they're doing a prequel. Now
let's just stop with this shit. We don't need it. We don't need the cinematic universe of the fucking Predator.
Yeah, no, they are.
A simple premise: bunch of army guys in the jungle get hunted by an alien. We don't need more.
Well, we're gonna get it. It's called Prey. Just so you know, it's called Prey. And it's set, I believe, in the 1800s. Yeah, it's set in the 1800s, and it's going to be about because of course in Predator 2, which we have to fucking take as canon, they had all those different things, and he got the gun from the 1800s. At the end of that movie, if you don't remember, spoiler, he gets a fucking gun from the Old West. Well, we're going to basically see that shit. So, yeah. joy. So that's what you guys can do.
No. No.
So yeah, on my end, we're behind again on podcasts. That's on me, and my schedule's just kind of hectic right now. So it will get done. I will get it done this weekend. I know I said that the last couple podcasts, but it will get done this weekend. So when you guys hear this part, you got loaded with like 5 fucking podcasts. So you're welcome. So yeah, that's where we're at, Joe.
Oh, what's your next pick, Paul?
Oh, well, next time on What Music White People Like,
Son of a bitch.
We're going to do Snow Patrol, Wildness.
Wildness. Snow Patrol.
Yes.
It's a bunch of white guys.
So, are you familiar with Snow Patrol at all?
No, but they're all a bunch of boring-looking white dudes. This is going to be Lindsey Buckingham all over again.
It's a Northern Irish Scottish band. This is the band that when they first came out, said that made people equated it to Snow Patrol makes Coldplay seem hard rock.
Oh, God. Your
I'll
crippling addiction is really destroying my life.
Music that white people like. Yeah, no, we're gonna kind of get into it. They had a big hit with their album Wide Eyes Open. I believe that was the big one. And then there's some things in there. Yeah, then they did 100 Million Suns. You probably heard the song Chasing Cars. If you've heard it, you just don't know you heard it. And then I will kind of get into what happened with the band, and then what we're going to get with Wildness is was supposed to come out much sooner than it did. And this is kind of like their return to doing music again. And this came out in 2018. Yep.
A band returns that I've never even heard of. I worked in a record store for 10 years. Never fucking heard of this band.
You never heard of Snow Patrol? Dude, they were everywhere for a while. This was
Man, they were big in Germany, Paul.
I'm saying, dude, Chasing Cars and a couple of their other songs, man, those were panty dropper songs, man. Those were like, it was like girls swooned over this shit, man. Yeah, like their songs Chasing Cars, Run, Open Your Eyes. Oh yeah, they had a big kind of following there, and it was like girl, like this was like the Beatles, like girls were in love with this band, and oh my God, I love Snow Patrol. Yeah, I dated, like I probably know it because I dated a bunch of girls that were in the Snow Patrol, is probably why I know this band.
You dated a lot of girls with 10 years.
Well, you know, I mean, to give it credit, I mean, they do have an association with Belle and Sebastian, so there you go.
Bitch, all right.
Oh, you're not a Belle and Sebastian fan either, are you? More music white people like.
Yeah, you know, I have my limits, Paul.
And I push those. You give me freedom, I give you wildness. I'm really, really intrigued to see what you're going to think about this album. So that's.
I looked at a picture of him, and I just, man, I don't think I've hated life this much. A bunch of boring white guys with beards. Fuck, yeah. They looked like, God, what's that?
Coldplay?
Looks like Coldplay and fucking Mumford and Sons. And fucking.
This was around the time Mumford and Sons was a big deal as well. Snow Patrol was out there with like it was Snow Patrol. Cities 97. You remember Cities 97?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, so before they tried to compete with like pop radio, they were playing like Snow Patrol, Interpol, Mumford and Sons, all those kind of bands around that time. Yeah, like that was like what that's yes. Cities 97 was like notorious for bands like that. Yeah, Interpol, Placebo, Snow Patrol, Mumford & Sons, that type of thing. Yep. So yeah, I'm really, really intrigued to see what you think of this. I'm excited, honestly. Honestly, I'm not gonna lie. I for whatever reason, and tell me when you listen to the album. Don't tell me what you think. Message me when you listen to it the first time, because I'm gonna send you a video of one of the songs off this album that had me rolling.
I don't want to watch a music video, so you're not getting that message from me. You're just guaranteed that's not going to happen.
The reason why I want you to see it is because when you look at the music video and you look at the song, there's a disconnect there of what the band's doing and what's being played musically. I remember when that video came out and I was like, what the fuck is this? Like, these guys are rocking and this is not a rocking song. Like, what the fuck?
Oh God.
You're welcome. Oh, the things we do for our audience, buddy.
I guess.
Hey, Joe, do you want to take us out?
No.